Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday to you. My name is Tim Harris. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for 10 with Tim. It's been a good week in the Word. It's Friday. It's been a long week, hard week here at the church, and it's going to be a long, hard weekend as well. A number of funerals, just a lot going on, carrying heavy burdens. But anyway, I'm glad to be with you. Happy to be in the Word with you, and I'm loving the book of Esther. It's just good. Chapter 4 is beautiful, and I love it so much, so let's jump right into it. You good? You okay? Let's read. Esther chapter 4. Chapter 3 focused on Haman. Chapter 4 focuses again on Mordecai. It's the first time that the Jews, all of the Jews are brought into the story as well. But still, this is a short story with four primary characters, and everything sort of focuses around the king and Haman and Mordecai and Esther. So we're back to Mordecai. The king in chapter 3 has issued this terrible proclamation that on March the 7th of the following year, all of the Jews will be killed. All of the Jews, men, women, boys, girls, young, old alike. Everyone is going to die, all the Jews. So Mordecai's learned about this. It's interesting. Mordecai seems to be the best connected and truly the best connected man in the kingdom. He seems to know. He has contacts inside the palace, contacts everywhere. Mordecai always knows what's happening. And so Mordecai comes out into the city, into the square outside the palace in burlap, sackcloth and ashes. And right outside the palace gate, he mourns. He makes this public display. It is out of despair, of course, but I really think this is protest. Mordecai, if he just wanted to grieve alone, he could have grieved alone or in the company of his fellow Jews. But Mordecai takes it straight to the king's front door. You get the idea. If he could walk right in, he'd do it right to the king's face. This is a protest. Mordecai is not some helpless victim. He is trying to call attention to what he sees to be this very, very unjust and evil proclamation. And so make no mistake, this is a public protest. He's doing this to call attention to this edict and to take it straight to the king. And so I think that's what he's doing. Anyway, it's interesting. This whole story is the exchange between Mordecai and Esther, but they never talk directly. It's all back and forth because she never leaves the palace. He never comes in the palace. So that's where it starts. He cannot enter the palace in burlap and ashes. Again, especially in the ancient, royal courts, you have to show deference to to His Royal Highness, and that means you can't just come in your sweatpants like you're at a dollar store, and you certainly can't come in mourning. In many cases, you can't even frown in the king's presence. You have to always act happy to see him. And so Mordecai cannot enter the palace in sackcloth, in burlap, and in ashes. So Esther wants to talk to him, so she sends clothes out so Mordecai can come in. If he changes clothes, he can come in and they could have a conversation, but he refuses it. He refuses it. And so Esther sends for Hathach, one of her eunuchs, and he starts going in and out to find out what Mordecai's deal is. And this exchange is really, really pretty interesting. At this point, Mordecai tells Hathach's going to tell Esther the whole story and actually gives him a copy of the flyer, the decree that's going out across the kingdom. And so at any rate, Hathach goes back in with Mordecai's message, delivers that to Esther. Esther says, go back out and tell him. It's this back and forth. They're never really together, but it's this back and forth. Mordecai asks Esther, appeals to Esther directly. You need to go to the king and beg for mercy. Go to the king, beg for mercy, and plead for your people. Now, this is really interesting because we know that from the beginning, Esther doesn't tell people that she's Jewish. She's very beautiful, and in racial terms, we would say she can pass. She can pass for Persian because she doesn't look Jewish. And so nobody knows she's Jewish unless she tells them. And Mordecai is the one who told her never to tell people, don't ever tell. But now he's instructing her to tell. And obviously, to tell people that she's Jewish is going to put her in a place of great danger. What he doesn't understand, what Esther knows, is that the king hasn't asked to see her in 30 days. Remember how I said these poor girls are? It's a terrible thing. They get dragged into the king's court. They lose their virginity in his bed, and then they just get sent back, and he may never see them again, and they just live their life in this luxurious seclusion, like beautiful little birds in a cage, and they never marry, they never have a life, you know. And Esther hasn't seen the king in 30 days. She was the winner of the prize. She's like the winner on The Bachelor, but it didn't seem to get her much because she has no access to this man that's called her husband. And she also knows that if she just barges right in there, you know, to see him, and he hasn't asked to see her, that he'll have her killed. You don't just walk in, you know, to the king's room, to his man cave, and ask to see him. And it also seems that, you know, a request to see him is out of the question too. Like she can't even, you know, send an email, you know, can I see you, you know, work out something with the secretary. I mean, she has no option. The king is in the place of total initiation. And if he doesn't initiate the contact, she can't see him. And that's what Esther says. Now, if she were to walk into his throne room and he were to extend his scepter, you know, I mean, there is the chance that he sees her and has mercy on her. This is what Esther knows that Mordecai doesn't seem to know, or at least for Mordecai, that's not even the issue, because Mordecai sees these stakes as so dire that Esther, you got to do what you can do. You got to do whatever you can do. So that's what Esther sends back. If I go see him, I could die. And Mordecai sends back and says, do you think for a moment you're not going to die anyway? Do you think that being in the king's palace is somehow going to protect you? When it becomes a free-for-all against all the Jews, you're going to be found out, and they're going to kill you too, girl. You know, none of us come out of this alive. And I'm asking you to take the chance that you can take to see if you can make a difference. You know, nobody's going to come out of this alive. It's really interesting. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place. Again, it's just interesting that they have all these conversations and never mention the name of God. But you and your relatives will die. You know, we're all going to die anyway. But who knows that perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this. You know, isn't that an amazing phrase for such a time as this? I just love that. So is she the hero? You know, no, she's an ordinary girl. You know, Esther is a particularly beautiful, apparently, teenage girl who never asked for any of this, man. She did not volunteer for this position. She didn't want any of this. And so far, none of this has worked out much to her benefit. She got a year's worth of free beauty treatments, you know, but those have now gotten her nothing. The king doesn't want to see her, you know. She didn't sign up for this, you know, and she's a kid. I just think it's interesting, and I think this is one of those passages you preach to kids. You preach this to teenagers because often we assume that because we are young that our life and our choices don't matter yet, you know. But honestly, I mean, those of us who were young and now we're old, we know good and well that, oh, absolutely, the choices you make at that age, you know, your life is as serious as it gets. You know, I mean, you just find yourself thinking, when I get out of middle school, when I graduate, when I get to high school, or in our day, you turn 16 and get a car, man, you think, man, that's when my life gets serious. Or, okay, when I graduate high school and go to college, that's when life gets serious. And you get to college and it ain't serious either. So it's like, okay, when I get married, or maybe I can get a big boy job, you know, I mean, we just keep kicking the can down the road, you know, assuming that our life ain't serious yet. And at some point, you got to realize, man, from day one, that is the only life you get, and it is as serious as it gets. Your choices matter. Your life matters from day one. So don't think because you're young that your life isn't serious yet. you know, and also don't think that you're the only person that matters. You know, I mean, there's a part of Esther that's like, oh man, I feel terrible for the Jews, but you know, if I go in there, they'll kill me. You know, and it's like she doesn't realize in that moment that you're a Jew, girl. You're a part of this, and your life is connected to others, and other people's lives matter as much as your life matters. So you can't just sit there in your gilded birdcage and tell yourself that you're going to be okay and wag your head, you know, because everybody else is going to be bad. But other people, their lives matter as much as yours. And whether you feel like you're the one that's in danger as other people, you got to do what you can for other people. And this is what Mordecai is trying to say to her. You know, you're a part of a people, you know. And so Esther decides to go forward. She asks everybody to fast and pray for her. Again, there's no mention of God, but she asked all the Jewish people to pray for her. Don't eat or drink for 3 days, which is a pretty serious fast. Even in those days, a typical fast was, maybe, sunrise to sunset sort of thing, but this is serious. I will go in and see the king, and if I die, I die. You know, God bless her. Like I say, she's a courageous young girl. If I die, I die. You ever had that moment, where you feel like God wants you to do something big? And it's so scary. I've never probably had my life on the line. I've never had my life on the line like Esther that I know of. But there have been moments when I have to realize that I want it more than I'm afraid of it, And in your life right now, there'd be that kind of situation. You really feel like you need to step out in courage, but there's fear. And you just have to decide, that you want it. You want it. And it's worth going for. You want it more than you're afraid of it, and that's ultimately where Esther is. Is she a hero? I don't think so. I don't know if God makes heroes. What God makes are people, but because God is God, he can put you in a particular place, a particular time. And in that moment, you become the right person. You're the right person in the right place at the right time, and God can use you to do something amazing. You may look like a hero. It may seem like at the end you did something great, but you were just an available person, a person who would say yes to God at a critical moment, at a critical time. And in that moment, God can use you to do something great. That's what's going to be for Esther. I don't know if she's a hero. She's a young girl with courage, but she becomes the right person at such a time as this, and God will use her, just like God will use you if you'll let him use you. Pick it right here, chapter 5. Esther's going to go to the king in chapter 5, verses 1 to 14. The chapters are short, so I'm going easy on you people. Short reading from day to day. But for Monday, Esther chapter 5, verses 1 to 14. Listen, if you don't have a church home, meet us here at Woodburn, Sunday morning, 8, 9:30, and 11. I'm preaching from the Psalms right now, and I'm preaching a sermon on Sunday entitled, I Can't Do It By Myself. I can't do it by myself. Psalm 130. I will see you then. If not, I will see you Monday morning, Lord willing, 10 o'clock for 10 with Tim. I love you guys so much.